QVC Quality Violent Cinema.
Tuning into Quality Violent Cinema. We've got a couple guests for you today. We're kind of going into an art round with this. So we have a couple people that are in the extreme horror community, but in the art. We got Silus Massoff and then Martin Trafford. So thank you. Appreciate you both coming on. So this would be kind of like a, questioning for both of you, but also kind of want to open up for discussion and let you both kind of be able to ask each other questions and kind of get into just into art and extreme horror. They definitely can be connected and definitely are connected. And it's kind of cool to see that you guys are very much become staples in that. So welcome.
Thank you.
Cheers. Thanks for having us.
Yeah.
So in the beginning, I'm going to kind of have these both kind of questions for both of you. I kind of just we can just start with well, Cyrus will lead it, and then Trafford can kind of follow into that. But I'm kind of going into like kind of the standard questions, like what inspired you to start getting into horror style of art.
So for me, I think it was really early on. So my dad was an artist and a musician. And from like the get-go, he would really try to cultivate creative outlets in me and introduce me to art making at a very young age. And so like as soon as I was able to hold something, they were trying to give me stuff to draw on, and I also from the get-go was really naturally inclined to, I just gravitated towards darker themed stuff. Like I just really loved horror from a really young age. And I was, even though I couldn't comprehend it or understand it, I had this like obsession with that shitty 2000 Spawn movie or like late 90s or whatever.
Hey, that soundtrack is awesome. So it's still awesome.
It's fine. Like it's awesome. It's a product of its time though, when you, especially when you go back and watch stuff like that, like that is a really good example, or like Queen of the Damned or something like that. Let's like the old vampire romance aesthetic, the movie, like but yeah, so I was just really into that stuff. I remember being like really into the Headless Horseman and Michael Myers. Like as soon as I like had the images of the two characters in my head, I was just like fucking obsessed with them. But my dad was also in the movies, and he collected movies and showed me video games and stuff. And I remember like he got a PlayStation for like both of us to play with when I was like 5 for Christmas. And the two games he got Resident Evil 3 for him, and he got like this Rugrats game for me. And I just like did not even show an interest in the Rugrats game at all. And I was just like, no, I'm going to watch you play Resident Evil. And then I was terrified of it, but I couldn't like look away, So that was fun. I also had family friends who were influential in like getting me into horror. I consider him an uncle, but he was just one of my dad's close friends and bandmates since they were in like high school. Tarkus was his name, and he just has this, I don't know if he still does. I need to catch up with him again. But he had this really awesome horror collection in his finished basement, and he had like a big shelf of VHS and a bunch of posters on the wall, and it had like a little half kitchen in it, and he had like an embalming machine in there, just in all this wacky shit and all these cool props. And he had like a little, like how people do the Christmas miniature villages in the corners of their houses. Sometimes he had one that was like all Halloween themed stuff. It was just an awesome place, and it was like a wonderland of spooky shit. And he would let me pick out movies off the shelves to borrow and take
Mhm.
home, and then my dad and I would watch them together, and that was so cool, so that's kind of what moved me in that direction. And then in art, I just tended to do the same thing. I would gravitate towards like showing spooky. I wanted to draw scary stuff. That's what I wanted to do from the get-go. So
Oh, cool. Yeah. On to you.
Yeah, well, I was thinking about this the other day, and I think I started drawing horrible things really young, like probably too young, worryingly young. So I remember my mother used to record. It was in the early days when we just got home VHS, early 80s, and she used to record all the old Hammer Horror and Universal monster movies.
Mm-hmm.
We didn't have a great deal to play with, so I'd have my pens and paper and crayons out, and I felt a real affinity to the villains in the movies. So I just used to draw Frankenstein and werewolf, and then I started getting grosser and getting my imagination involved and skewering zombies and things. And I found that I was half decent at it, and I really enjoyed the process of doing it as well. Sort of bringing to life these things via paper on the screen, and I remember really upsetting my mother with one of the drawings, and that was like all I needed to draw more. So the more it upset people, the more I did it, because the more attention I got, especially at school. Like the kids at school used to love it. So I think this sort of art and horror kind of went hand in hand from very early on, really.
Mm-hmm.
As soon as I could draw, I was drawing, headless people and kids at school bisected and things, But yeah, and the whole VHS thing had started off then. So as far as like pop culture influences and things, like we used to go to the VHS stores when they just opened up, and it was the early days before the DPP 39 video nasty scare. Mm. So they had all those fantastic old big box VHS, I Spit on Your Grave, and the Nightmare on Elm Streets and things as well, Evil Dead. So walking into a video store and seeing all those posters and covers, it was like mind-blowing for me. Mm. I'd spend hours and hours just picking things up and looking at the covers and putting them back. And then I'd go home, I'd steal posters or, the trade magazines with the VHS that were coming soon sort of thing. And then I'd go home and sort of redraw and trace and, try and educate myself in putting lines down on paper and light sources and things like that.
That's awesome.
And, I sort of found the work of Graham Humphreys through the video store when I was really young as well. Yeah, he's an artist I really love. And he's still working today. He's a great guy as well. But I used to draw, especially his Nightmare on Elm Street 2 and his Return of the Living Dead posters. I used to draw and redraw. And at school, when I was meant to be doing maths, I had the little video magazine out, back of the textbook, drawing Freddy Krueger. Yeah. So,
hell yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah. That was kind of how it all started with me. Yeah, it was getting me attention, and it was a good in with kids as well, making friends at school. I was the weird kid that drew horrible things, and I still am. And I'm the weird old fellow that draws horrible things.
So speaking of school, are both of you schooled in the arts, like high school and college, and gotten degrees in, or?
Man,
yes.
Yeah. So I have a bachelor's in fine arts and humanities, but I swear in high school they just would not let me take art classes. Like it's like I had if I wanted like any technicals or honors or anything to graduate with, like they just would not, like they're like, well, you don't have room for these extracurriculars. So I wasn't allowed to like really, I think I got like 2 in my senior year after I had done everything else that I could have possibly done towards a diploma. So they finally let me take like 2 things back to back, and then I figured out that the arts department at my high school actually wasn't very good. It was just kind of one of those like throw kids in here that don't want to do anything. It was almost like a homeroom instead of like an art class. So we really do jack shit. But
Well, I feel like art shouldn't be elective. Like it should be
right.
It should be a course that required.
If it wasn't considered something that should be an elective, especially in like the rural Midwest, I think that there would be a lot more cultivating, like focus and building skill. And it wouldn't just be some remedial like room where people sit for an hour, and doodle.
Yeah, it was always seen as a bit of a dodge when I was at school. All the kids, when they went to their art class, they just do nothing, toss it out for an hour, and it wouldn't really be encouraged very much by the teachers. And I mean, we had one or two good teachers that would encourage me, especially. But even the teachers knew that the kids there weren't interested,
Yeah.
I think it is seen as a bit of a dodge at school, which is why art's not valued, when you grow out of that and you grow up and go out into the real world. There's a lot of that undervaluing of art as a skill. And I think it stems from school. It stems from it being seen as a bit of a dodge.
That's pretty sad too, because it's such a universal thing to humans. Just being a human, everywhere. Like the ability to make art, like the ability to create in that way.
So do either of you dig in any format besides horror just for practice, or you strictly draw horror?
For myself, it's pretty much 100% horror these days. Yeah, I'll occasionally make a portrait or something, but yeah, it's pretty much.
I've done some stuff just for the sake of like trying to mimic or learn like a technical aspect of a piece. But typically I find a way to make it fit within like a darker subject matter. Like even if it's a portrait piece, like I feel like I will naturally still try to assign something darker to it, just with the final product. But it's a lot of different things for me that kind of like hodgepodge into the full body of work. But like horror media is like, if I had to break it down, like simply, I think horror media is like one half of it, and then like mental health is the other half of it. So like meshing that kind of stuff.
It's like a beautiful rainbow, but it's bleeding. It's like raining blood,
yeah. And sorrow and existential dread.
Blackness.
What are some other artists that have inspired you?
I'd say personally, like as I said, growing up, Graham Humphreys, definitely. But then when I went to art college, I was really big I was big on pop art, actually. I got into a lot of the darker stuff, like Francis Bacon and, the traditional stuff. But yeah, I was big on pop art, which you wouldn't really connect the two now. Just that sort of the sort of collage and the poppy
like Shepard Fairey or
Shepard Fairey.
Yeah, he's he did Obey, I think, right? That's what Shepard Fairey is, I think.
Oh yeah. No, I was more Lichtenstein.
Okay.
I was a big fan because he took that comic book thing and made it, art, an art gallery canvas. So that got me into pop art, and then I was really into the 60s psychedelic music scene, so I got into the Warhol Factory thing, and but I wouldn't say Warhol was a big influence on me. So it was pop art, and then hand in hand with that 60s psychedelic scene, it's the old Art Nouveau. Gustav Klimt and Mucker, Egon Schiele, that kind of thing. So I think I try and sort of still weave in a little bit of that 60s psychedelic thing with the horror art that I do now. A lot of it's probably a lot too bright and poppy for the subject matter.
Right.
Silus goes dark. He's good at the dark stuff. I think my stuff's probably a bit too poppy and bright.
No, I wouldn't say that.
I think that specifically the interesting color palette choices and uses of color that you do are something that definitely adds to them. I think it really makes them stand out amongst just, like you're always like living in the modern era, you're always like inundated with incoming like visual imagery like all day long. So
well, immediately draws your eye. Yeah, with the color
yeah.
palette, and so then you're like you see it first, you're like, oh, that's really, and they're like, oh wait, that's really fucking crazy.
yeah. So I think it's definitely a plus. But for artists that I was really inspired by, like it was kind of cool you listing a lot of those people, because those were artists that I remember learning pretty extensively about in school. But I when it came to the things that were like inspiring what I was doing or informing what I was doing, I was looking a lot more at the commercial level and a lot of like really, really contemporary stuff. And then I like a lot of like underground and outsider art as well. But in terms of like names that people would know, like I think Francis Bacon was an early thing for me. I got into Francis Bacon, but I the more I learn about him, it's less about the cultural or socio-political subtext of the stuff that he was creating, and it's way more about him as a personality, his struggles with mental health, his obviously his approach to art and the style that he used. And I think that's what a lot of people glean from it nowadays, now that it's kind of removed from the original context that he existed within, which is fine. I mean, what else can we can't relate to what he was painting about, really. But in terms of newer artists, I remember just being really, really, really infatuated with the Goosebumps cover arts as a kid by Tim Jacobus. Like I remember that, it's really great too, because it's such a product of its time, but they're still super cool. I mean, they still hold up. But that airbrush style, like the fact that there are all these like huge canvas pieces that are like airbrushed, it's just, there's something so special and so specific about that, especially with the 90s like paperback and pulp art. I love that kind of stuff a lot. I always used, when I was younger and I didn't have like ways to kind of reach out with the internet and find reviews of anything I want to check out now like I can as an adult in current times, I would always gravitate towards just using my eye to pick out stuff that I wanted to check out. So it wasn't so much about like gravitating towards specific artists so much as it was like singling out cover arts that really, really just like clicked something for me. So I'd like pick those up and check those out first and foremost.
Yeah, I totally get that.
Yeah, the Goosebumps, and then also the like my more scary stories or scary stories. I remember those illustrations as kids. It's just like
Stephen
was standing out, like such crazy.
Sorry,
especially as a kid.
Blanking. He's definitely an awesome influence for me, Stephen Gamble, and also Edward Gorey. Oh man, just yeah. I mean, those are pretty common in terms of like horror illustrators from that time, but there weren't a lot of mainstream ones that got to household name status. So that,
there's that one German guy, I forget his name, but he did those weird weird rhymes to basically kids. If they did certain things, they'd hurt themselves. Like cried too much, their eyes would fall out. That kind of stuff. But fun stuff.
That's why I like to read when I was 5.
Right.
I think I used to gravitate to a lot of those horror novels that you'd get in school libraries. because of the cover art initially.
Yeah.
I remember a really great one of it was a book of collected stories. I can't even remember who published it, but the cover was an egg which had been cracked open and an eyeball which had spilled out of it with blood. That really resonated.
Yeah.
I've got to get that. I'm reading that.
I love that. I love especially things that have just like this weird, like dark surrealist approach to them, where they're not even representative of anything in the book. Especially with those like collected storybooks, they were always just like, just make something weird and provocative that's going to make a kid pick it up. You know, like
make sure it doesn't relate to any of the stories that are in there.
Yeah, it just has to be vaguely scary, just vaguely spooky imagery.
Yeah.
In those weird, like little Jehovah Witness comics, where kind of freaky and scary and like fun reads. You know what I'm talking about?
I collect shit like that.
I love them. I like everything. So like, these are fucked up.
Yeah, I have another friend, and every time we find any like religious leaflets and stuff like hidden around our town, like,
oh, they're great.
Such a treat, because they always have artwork in them, and I'm always like, man, like I would love to hear an interview with one of these guys. Like I want to hear what they're all about, you know.
Yeah, Billy slept up, now he's gone to hell.
They're writing like propaganda comics to tell kids they're going to hell.
Yeah,
it's so great.
we never got anything that cool in the UK. We just got the Watchtower leaflets, that was it.
Oh really?
Yeah.
So what's your usual go-to medium? What do you usually paint with?
Well, personally, I'm pretty much 100% digital now. I stiff-armed it for years. I wouldn't go digital at all. I thought it was selling out. But now I really struggle to put pen to paper. I find that I'm double tapping the paper to try and delete what I've just done. But yeah, before that, I was just, I'd only work in black and white, pen and ink, because I couldn't paint. I've taught myself to paint on the iPad. It was so much easier. But yeah, I could never handle oil paints or acrylics or anything like that. And before that, I couldn't, when I first started out, I couldn't afford technical pens. So I just used to draw with biros, black biros, writing pens. And that's how I started off. I just writing pens on paper. And then I started getting noticed. It kind of had a punk aesthetic to it. So people seem to like it. But yeah, now I've just purely iPad, Procreate. It's great.
I've been getting into Procreate a lot more recently, which is really nice now that I've got kind of a handle on how to use it properly. And obviously, I mean, like I don't know a ton, but like I'm just getting to the point where I can knock things out a lot quicker, and it's not so much trial and error and troubleshooting and stopping to watch a tutorial or something now. So that's really nice and convenient. But I prefer traditional art whenever the person I'm doing a commission for is okay with it. Just because I think that it provides a lot more of an outlet for me emotionally. I notice when it's something more tactile like that, like I think it just does a lot for me to create a piece that way, especially with the not being able to take a mark back. I find myself being a lot more intentional with mark making and creating pieces if I'm using like pens and markers or paint or something like that, where I know, like once it's there, and I just have to work around it. And that's a lot of fun to create pieces like that. And I think it's really great when you run into creators that specifically want you to do that. Like I had a commission not that long ago, and I had just moved into my new house, and all of my traditional supplies were still packed away in boxes. I hadn't started setting up my office space or anything yet. And I had to create a commission for somebody by the end of the month, and I didn't think that they would honestly give a shit, like either way, like what medium I chose. And then I told them, well, I was originally going to do this traditionally, but all my stuff's packed away and I know I need to get this done quickly, so I might just go ahead and do it this way. And they were like, well, I could do it digitally, like I have a graphic design degree, I could do it digitally. Like I want like artwork, like, like I want traditional art. And I was like, cool. That's actually awesome, because I only said that because I didn't think you would give a shit either way. So like the fact that I got asked to do it traditionally, then I was like super jazzed about the piece, like I was super excited about it. And I think it came out a lot better for it. So that was cool. But in terms of traditional mediums, I really like anything and everything that I've used so far. I feel like I'm still really, really experimental in that sense, where like sometimes I'll just switch it up just because I want to see what happens if I do something that I'm not comfortable with. And then I can usually tell like pretty early on if I'm like losing control of it, and if it seems like really shitty, then I'm just like, well, I can just start on a new page and try something different so I've got plenty of pages from traditionally created projects where there's something that's like a quarter of the initial drawing is done, and then I just moved to another page and restarted because I wanted to make sure that I felt right about it going forward before I like color it in and then decide like this finished piece looks like shit. So yeah, but I like everything. I've really enjoyed like any medium I've messed with for all kinds of different reasons, depending on like the mood or tone of the piece.
Yeah, especially when you can kind of like mix mediums and be able to be good at that. And so
yeah, mixed media is a lot of fun. Yeah, I love mixing different things together and doing like technical pen outline work, and then like stipple dotting the entire thing with alcohol markers or something, because it really gives it a really, really unique look once everything has a few hours to like set in and settle down.
Yeah, there's definitely more of a connection when you're doing physical art like that, for sure. There's more of a sort of osmosis with it, because you're naturally stirring up molecules by putting paint to paper, or
feels a lot more organic.
Yeah. You're literally changing the universe around you by doing that. Whereas there's a massive disconnect to doing it on the iPad.
Yeah.
I can imagine.
If it weren't so, it felt like actually using a pen on paper. Then I tried a Wacom tablet before that and doing it that way, and there was too much of a disconnect between my brain, my arm, and the screen. I just couldn't do it that way.
Yeah, and I actually have a Wacom tablet that I specifically preferred for a long time because I had so much trouble feeling a connection when I was creating a digital piece. And I used it for a long time because of that. And it had all these different style nibs to put on the end to get like a specific texture or feel that you wanted. And it was so great. And then now, which I think it's a good thing for the sake of being versatile with like what I'm able to do if someone asks. Now I just don't give a shit. Like I noticed that it's so much easier now to just make something directly on the iPad. And I just, even though it's so slippy slidey and it's not nearly anything like, the same process as traditional, like it's whatever. Like sometimes it's what you think someone wants or is going to ask for. So I'm like, this past year specifically too, I've been trying to really tell myself like, yeah, you can have a focus in traditional art, but just know how to do the other stuff too. You need to make yourself more comfortable with this, like so that you can still use it when you need to, Don't stagnate. Stagnation is death.
Yes. Do you find, because I find if I don't do any art for a few days, I can't get motivated to start again. So I just don't stop. I just keep going.
Yeah, I overthink the creative process really, really, really bad. Well, I have gone through a lot of like really long stage art blocks before, and I remember I was actually in the middle of one that I was having a really hard time getting out of when I originally saw Sam Hell post a story asking if there was anybody watching that was interested in doing art for a project, and I literally messaged him about that piece, which turned into the artwork for The Odd World of Felicia Fisher, and that was the first commercial piece I had done for a movie ever. But I asked for that because I knew if I was making something for another person and there was a deadline attached to it or an expectation attached to it, then I would actually make something. Because otherwise, like, I just could not make myself create. Like, I just could not make myself make art. And that was really, really what I needed, was to find like an open call so I could force myself to do something.
Yeah, no, I completely get that. If I find I go through stages where I've not got any work lined up, I'll go and look for call outs or, you know, competitions or something, just to keep the juices flowing. Yeah.
Going to tell you, Silus.
Yeah, for me it was the Odd World piece, The Odd World of Felicia Fisher. Well, that was my first one for a film. I had done like just a little bit of commission work, just really minor stuff for friends and close contacts before that, but nothing that ever made it to like a commercially available like product or item. So that was the first one like that. So that was awesome.
And what about you, Martin?
Oh, sorry, it dropped out a little bit my end then, it's froze. Yeah, so my first commission, it would have been from Jörg Buttgereit. It would have been the VHS cover for The Making of Schramm, because I think he was just finishing off the post-production on Schramm when I first met him. So yeah, he hired me to do that cover, and then off the back of that, he then hired me to do the official T-shirt design for Schramm. So it's a pretty good start.
I'd say. That's awesome.
Yeah. Have you done any gallery work or like had anything in galleries?
I had a gallery show for my senior year of school. We had a program, it was called like Senior Capstone, and typically it would be a class that had like 6 to 8 students in it at any given time, and they would all be like senior art students. And there is in my town in Indiana, the college had a separate gallery space that was numbered like a classroom, but it wasn't on campus. It was downtown in our city, and they had like renovated it and turned it into a small gallery. So for the art students at the end of the year to make the best use of space, since we don't have a ton on campus, those students would exhibit in that gallery space. But for me, it was only me and one other student the semester that I was in my senior capstone. There were literally just the two of us. So we were able to do hours on campus because there's a hallway in the main building called Meyer Artway, and it had they usually just have a just running gallery shows of some kind there all year round. Just simple like 2D works they can hang on the wall just to like essentially decorate and spread art, you know, and it's really cool. But I already knew from the get-go that my thing was going to be really fucked up. So my project was called Slasher, and it was about a like a found object interactive horror installation about a mentally deficient serial killer in the rural Midwest who is absolutely obsessed with horror media and slasher films, and ends up becoming this serial killer, and journaling the stuff that he's doing, and writing and drawing pictures of things that he's doing to victims, and then eventually finds a camcorder in the belongings of one of the victims that he kills, and then starts recording things. And I made like this little found footage horror film video installation thing to go with the exhibit, and then had it playing on a CRT on like a VHS copy that I made of it for the duration of the show while it was up. And so this was a senior capstone. It was up for like 3 or 4 months. And this installation, like I had these concrete tiles that had like fake like latex skin stuck to them, and some of them had like fake tattoos that I had drawn like on the skin, and there would be like labels next to them, like one that would be like pretty girl, and then like an arrow to like a mandala flower on a piece of skin stuck on a tile, you know, like a $2 fucking concrete tile. And that's then I made a bunch of like really crude artwork on just planks of wood that I found, and like wood panels, and then would like staple gun and nail pieces of like canvas that I had drawn on and drawn with like fake blood or whatever, and these like fucked up pieces of like serial killer art that you would see in like the set design of a movie or something like that. You know, I was just trying to make something that was really heavily inspired by horror cinema, and specifically kind of branching off of my love for older like golden age slasher films, and then also some of the extreme underground and some like of the torture porn category, but a lot of that's kind of bloated and shitty. But there are a few entries that influence that. But I remember one thing that really influenced the aesthetic for that exhibit, and it probably help for most people that would listen to this get into the headspace of what this looked like or whatever. I had already had the plan for this project, and then to kind of get the juices flowing, my partner at the time and I went to Horror Hound because there was one near us, and I really wanted to like just be in like the creative mindset with like horror stuff in mind to be able to do this project. And then I picked up a copy of Headless and then I went back home and watched Headless, and I was genuinely like taken aback by how fucked up it was, because I hadn't watched an extreme film for a while. And then I checked that out, and I was like, man, that's like exactly what I want to do with this project. You know, like I wanted to feel that grimy and nasty. And I made all these nasty latex masks, and like masks made out of like aluminum foil and masking tape, and then crudely painted over. And I took a bunch of really fucked up and scary like cryptic Polaroid photos, and I like strung them up on the walls and hung the masks on the walls, and had specific instructions that went with the installation to the side that told people they were allowed to interact with everything in it. Like I wanted people to touch everything and pick up everything and interact with the space, and feel gross while doing it. And I put I had this like plastic garbagey bin full of a bunch of trash, like literally trash I had accumulated from art supplies and stuff I was gathering to like make this space. But I took out anything that would be too like specifically art products, and made it just look like a bunch of fucking garbage. And I also put these plastic like shopping bags in there with I had gotten wigs and I had made fake scalps and adhered the scalps inside of the wigs and then just covered them in fucking gore and put them in these shopping bags and then sprayed the inside of the shopping bags with like this joke store like fake fart spray I found like on the internet because I just wanted them to smell awful. And so then I like shut it in this bin and you couldn't smell it just when you were in the hallway because I didn't want it to be like something that would get complained about and get my stuff taken down. But if somebody was curious enough to open the bin, they would see like the bloody scalps in bags and just smell something bad, like something rancid.
That's funny.
And I never heard any negative comments about it. I actually got a lot of praise from my mentor and professor.
Oh, so creative.
No, it was awesome. She told me it was gutsy and honest, and I
gutsy.
Yeah, I was super into that. I was like, hell yeah, it was. Like I didn't water that down at all. I made that as fucked up as I could. I wanted to have someone tell me no, like
yeah.
But nobody did. Nobody told me no. I splattered fake blood all over the wall. Like and they left it up for 3 months in the main building. It was fucking awesome. But yeah, no, and then the gallery tech who I still talk to sometimes on Instagram. He's a super cool guy and he's an artist too. On the faculty staff, like they have faculty art shows. It's so awesome. Even people that aren't in the arts department like submit art to it. It's super cool. But he was like reminiscing on it with me not that long ago, and it was like, yeah, it was a super cool time and it was really tense. Like it's like, so I guess people were making comments, but only like to him and like the other people associated with like literally like the gallery hallway and managing it and stuff. So I'd be curious to hear some of what those were now, because I think I would get a kick out of it.
So what about you, Martin? What about you in gallery work?
Yeah. Not much of it horror related though. I think the last exhibition I was included in, a friend of mine in Barcelona, who's an artist, Ismail Delage, he goes by. He did a really big queer art show there, and I think I was the only straight guy invited to be in it. But I was pretty honoured that he asked me. So I did a piece based on the Necromantic 2 cover art, because we kind of met through Necromantic. And yeah, that exhibited in Barcelona, and then I think the same year I had some comic book art exhibited in the States. I can't remember exactly where in the States it was. And then before that, when I first moved to Canberra in Australia, I was included in a gallery show here, which was all based on the theme of some medieval story. We all got a page each to do in this book, and then they exhibited it as an exhibition. But other than that, I think the first gallery thing I would have done, we weren't exhibiting, but we were invited to sort of hold a workshop within York Art Gallery in the UK, which is a huge art gallery. And I used to run a community arts project with a friend of mine called the Doodle Manifesto. We'd just get people to sort of come and try art, almost art therapy, basically. Because a lot of people don't want to try art because they don't know where to start, and there's nothing more daunting than looking at a blank piece of paper. So what we do is we'd have 6 or 7 pieces that we'd all start on, and then we'd pass around the group, whoever had turned up. So we used to do this in pubs and bars and things, but then we sort of, somehow they allowed us to do it in York Art Gallery. They didn't let us near any of the old brown paintings, luckily. We might have ruined the place. Well, that was fun. So yeah, but nothing really as cool as Silus is.
There's a lot of stuff about it that was pretty amateurish. Yeah.
Oh, if I could have got away with splashing blood on the walls of York Art Gallery, that would have been awesome.
Right.
I would have made the news.
So you're both being, it seems like you're both big fans of the movie Found. Like what in that movie do you find inspirational, and what is it about that film you find that is so good?
Man, I'll let Martin go first.
Yeah, well, I mean that movie for me is my top independent art horror movie ever. Especially as the first outing for Scott, it's unreal, and it won so many accolades as well. I mean that opening line in the movie is one of the best opening lines in any movie. Can't like my brother keeps a human head in the closet. That's a grabber from the get-go, that one. And I mean, people complain about the acting in it, but it's an independent movie. It's not going to be top-notch actors in there. And I thought everybody in there did a great job. Especially the young boys. They did fantastic. They'd never acted before. But the story is really compelling. It goes places you don't expect. By the time the film ends, I mean, the first time I watched it, it was the first time in a long time I found myself watching a movie and not realizing how long I'd been holding my breath by the end of it. Just the way it ramps up at the end, the whole massacre, and then the scene of, I don't want to spoil it for anyone. But yeah, that blew me away like no other film had in a long time. So much so that I got in touch with Scott Schirmer immediately, and luckily I found out that he was doing the crowdfunding for Headless at that time as well. So I managed to bother him enough to get on board with doing some artwork and promotional material for that, and he included my face in it as well. There's a scene in Vic's Roller Rink, the Employees of the Month poster. He's got my mugshot on that.
Are you serious? I didn't know that.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
awesome.
Yeah,
Now I need to rewatch it.
That is awesome.
Yeah, well, that was
so cool.
Yeah, and I actually own. I can probably grab it to show you on here. Actually, I own Marty's sketchbook from Found.
Oh, that's cool.
Oh, hell yeah.
Yeah.
I'm actually about to. Scott Schirmer agreed to an interview, which I'm stoked for. So I'm gonna have an interview with him soon. Which
That's awesome.
Yeah, I just got that today. I was like, oh yeah. I haven't set up a date yet, but it'll be sometime soon, probably in April. But...
Fingers crossed.
Oh no, it's happening. It's happening. He already agreed.
So it's super cool.
It's exciting.
It's such a weird and really cool connective thing, especially that Martin, that you're willing to put it, that high for you as being like a favorite piece of independent film. Found was so first the preface. I work as a librarian as my day job. And I've been in a bunch of different departments at my library, but the one I started out in was the audiovisual department because it felt I had a really good friend who had been a best friend of mine since like the beginning of middle school, who worked there in that department. And I thought it was like the coolest thing ever because it was like the closest we could get to like a video store. Like we had family video, but they were starting to they were definitely on the decline, and it was very obvious then. But also this place, at the library, we carried a bunch of stuff because the selector for the audiovisual department was super, super well versed in film. And he was one of my favorite bosses I ever had. He cultivated a really, really great collection of stuff, including some like niche or strange bizarro cinema and like underground horror and stuff like that. But it wasn't ever skewed too far in any one direction. Like he just had such a great collection of film in our department. And I thought it was the coolest thing. It was so intentional. And one thing that he was sure to show me, because he knew how into horror I was when I first got on staff there, was Found. And I was also really blown away by it. Like I thought it was such a cool movie, and it was so high concept and so compelling for the scope that it was created in, you know, like for the budget and the constraints that were put on that film. I just think it pulled off so much and so well. And I was I immediately started to look into it further, and one, I think it's super cool that it was an adaptation from kind of like a splatterpunk story. And that was super cool to me, because I really love in terms of like the kinds of books I like that make me interested in the library world. It's always been like pulp horror novels and then like weird underground bullshit, you know. And so when I figured out, when I traced Found back to being like this cool like splatterpunk adaptation, kind of splatter, it's just more kind of like extreme horror story thing, you know. I thought that was so awesome. And then I have had just all these weird little connections that have cropped up with it ever since then. Like when Headless came out, I had totally missed out on the campaign for it, because by the time I saw Found, I think Headless had like just came out. And then right before that senior project, I went to Horror Hound, and then just so happened to see a big booth that was promoting Headless, and I had like a shit ton of copies, and I was like, that's the movie that was in Found. And like, I didn't know about Headless at this point. I just saw it organically at this booth, and I was like, that's the movie from Found, because I watched that not that long ago, and I remember that, and I remember that mask. And so I picked that up, and then it became such a big aesthetic influence that I started to collect really heavily for Found and Headless, whatever I could get my hands on. And then I remember at one point Scott was throwing like a few extra copies of stuff they were finding left over from like the Indiegogo campaigns or whatever onto his web store. And I was paying really close attention to those posts because I wanted to grab what I could. And I remember grabbing the like Indiegogo exclusive Blu-ray release from the store, and I was so excited about grabbing it. But it was like all the spending money I had for like buying media or anything frivolous on that paycheck. And then the next day that the big box VHS got put on there, and I was like, oh my God, I was like, I missed out. Like I bought the wrong one, you know, because I was so much more into that for the sake of like a shelf piece. Like, it's just so cool, you know? And so I told my partner at the time, I was like, hey, listen, like it's getting close to the holidays. I know it's like kind of far in advance. You don't have to get me anything else. If you want to like really get me something that I'm going to love and appreciate, will you please get this movie for me before it goes? Because it just got listed. I know it's going to sell like almost immediately, because people are already talking about it on Facebook. And she told me like 10 minutes later, I got a text back, and I was at work when I saw it got posted. And she was like, it was already sold out when I went to the page. And I was like, oh no, you know, it's whatever. And then Christmas rolls around, and she handed me that fucking VHS because she tricked me, and she told me that that it wasn't available anymore, and someone had already bought it, and then it wasn't, and she got it for me, and it was awesome. And that was the first piece of Martin's artwork that I owned physically, were the art cards that came with that big box VHS release of Headless. I remember being so enthralled with all the goodies that came out of this package when I opened it up, and I was just so into it. And that really kickstarted me on getting into more indie cinema and more underground cinema and more extreme cinema. And I actually used Martin's artwork as like a starting off point to start spider webbing in different directions and finding stuff from other directors and creators within that subculture and community. And so I was spending a lot of my evening shifts in like closing down the AV department. Like I would just have hours of like hardly anything that was like active work. It was just like desk jockey stuff for the later night shifts when it was like the last 2 hours before close. So I spent so many evenings just going on to IMDb and watching trailers, and then like going down all these different lists and rabbit holes on forums and learning about underground films. and just taking the time to like get myself up to date and more well versed on stuff, because I used to be really into weird niche horror stuff that I could find back when the video store carried anything worth a damn. And I would always be able to sniff out those releases, but I'd been kind of out of it for a while because I got busy with college and school and stuff. And then this was something that really re-inspired me, to get back into it. So that's cool. That's all like a weird, super cool, like small world zeitgeisty bullshit kind of like a hodgepodge connection of coolness there.
I love that.
But an even cooler thing that just happened just recently. So one of my local friends is a tattoo artist, and she has a pretty successful tattoo shop here in my town. And she has an apprentice who is working under her right now, who is moving to our area from Kentucky. But she used to live in Bloomington, and she used to be friends with Arthur Colifer and all of his friends. And she was involved in a bunch of these, like, what'd she call it? Atomic Age Cinema, I think is what they called it. And they had this like cool theater thing they would do where they would like rent out this space and they would show old movies and kind of do like riff tracksy like mystery science theater shit over it and make it was like a comedy night event. And so they would also do these skits beforehand. And like, so Arthur and a bunch of people that worked on Headless and other stuff and worked with Scott and whatever were all friends with this girl who I'm now friends with, just by this weird happenstance that she is the apprentice currently at this shop. And so once she figured out that I was into that stuff, she was like, hey, I have friends that worked on that movie. And I was like, what? Like, like you've already tattooed me and I had no idea you knew any, like this would be a connection. So yeah, so she used to be friends with Arthur, and then they would she would be involved in some of the skits at these Atomic Age Cinema nights and like wear like gore effects and weird costumes and get on stage and do silly stuff with them. And I'm wearing a shirt that she designed like right now, like that, because the shop is.
I'm wearing this right now.
Oh hell yeah! Thank you. And Martin's wearing his super cool collage, his serial killer collage.
Yeah,
yeah.
We're all repping some stuff.
But yeah, so that just happened like very, very recently. I like found all that out, and I was just like, what are the chances? Like it's just so weird that all this stuff is kind of like coming together in that way. And also I live like a couple hours away from the Bloomington area where like Found and Headless were shot, and like I don't know Scott, but like I'm friends with him on Facebook, and I pay attention to his posts because I love his movies. But it's just so weird, like I was also like really excited about the idea that really cool stuff like that was happening so close to where I was at. And it made me think like, oh, I should like get into this a little more and pursue something, because it would be maybe worth it to do that. And now look at where we're at. This is so crazy. It's only been like a few years.
Yeah, it's crazy how quickly things happen. I
will just flex this.
Hell yeah.
Oh, nice.
That's so awesome.
Marty's sketchbook. And it's still got some of the sketches that apparently Shane Beasley did these sketches.
Oh yeah.
Crazy.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Killer.
There's a few pages of those in there still. And I asked Scott, because I remember seeing some of these pages torn out and burnt in one scene, and it was pure movie magic, photocopied paper apparently. So these are the original sketches. Yeah,
that's cool.
Prize possession.
So cool.
Yeah.
I'm also a Marty that loves to draw horror comics.
So what is some music that gets you into painting or gets you in the mood?
Weirdly, I'm not into metal at all. Everybody assumes I'm metal because of the kind of work I do, but I'm into like 60s psychedelia, and I was an indie kid. I was Happy Mondays and Stone Roses and stuff. Recently I've been listening to a lot of a band called The Cool Greenhouse, and Sleaford mods. So the kind of music you wouldn't really expect me to be, emoting so much blood and gore on the page while I'm listening to it. But yeah, that's the kind of thing that gets me hyped up, I guess.
I remember I would kind of start seeing in between posts you make about artwork and films and stuff, some of the posts you make about music. I wasn't surprised, but or anything, but I thought it was cool. I thought it was really neat because I was like, oh yeah, it takes all kinds, like it's just wild to see how there are several subcultures and things that sort of seem to intermesh and connect for a lot of people that are involved in niche art that has the kind of aesthetic that these films would have. But it's cool to see the more you get to know people within the community, just how varied their range of interests are, and that this is just one little facet of what they're into. And then seeing the stuff that they're into that you have no idea about, and that you don't even know very much about at all, and getting to kind of get a new perspective into that and learn about that. So I always thought that was really cool. Yeah, I like the stuff that you post. And it's stuff I don't know about at all. So it's really cool to have an entry point. I like all kinds of different music, all kinds of different genres, and I really mean that. Sometimes when I'm making work, I just switch around depending on the day. It's just a different mood all the time. And I tend to gravitate towards things that are more long play, stuff I can listen to for a longer amount of time without constantly having to fiddle with a device and get out of whatever I'm doing. So a lot of times I get into, just for the sake for workflow's sake, I get into drone and ambient soundscape kind of stuff.
I can see you being into Godspeed You Black Emperor.
Yeah. Yeah. But yeah, weird shoegazy shit, or funeral doom and black metal and atmospheric black metal, because it's the tracks are 18 minutes a fucking piece. So it's I can put on one of those records and have 2.5 hours of work time without touching anything. But that's actually what I think ends up influencing it more than the actual genre or whatever is being connoted by the piece. Sometimes it is that. Sometimes I'm oh, I want to be in this mood, so I'll listen to this kind of music. But a lot of the time when it's just I want to get some hours in on this tonight, I just put on something that I can kind of lose myself in the background that'll help me keep myself stimulated with what's in front of me. So.
Do you find that any music that inspires you to do any certain pieces, you hear a certain song, you're like, wow, I'm just imagining some brutal piece.
So it was really cool. Back when Sam released his documentary, I Cut Your Flesh, I, before that came out, had been really jazzed on this newer, really weird, super kind of thrashy, grindy band, but they're kind of almost a extreme, very fast hardcore, called Mouth Breather. And one of their songs is the opening titles track for I Cut Your Flesh, and I had no idea that Sam knew who this band was or anything. And I remember just being so jazzed about it, on mail day when I got this thing in the mail, and I sat down to watch it, and then that played, and I was like, this is so cool. I just got into this band 2 months ago, and I've been really in love with their discography. But it really connoted exactly the kind of feeling I would try to channel into the Love Dump artwork when I got the opportunity to make that, because I wanted to make something that just felt really really brutal, but also really quick and punchy and psychotic. I guess I was trying to channel something really cerebral and really visceral with what I was doing on the page. So I was listening to a lot of really high speed or intense stuff, or lots of really heavy music that had kind of connotations for that kind of set of emotions. And I was kind of using that as fuel to continue marking on the page, because that's one of those pieces where I just kind of stippled with alcohol markers until it was filled in. And so I just like dotted and dotted and dotted and dotted and just like kind of went with the tempo of the music until it was done. And also I had my ex partner, who I'm still best friends with, she and her now current partner, her current partner lives in LA, and they both live in LA now, but they had sent us edibles, like dispensary edibles, like gummies and stuff. So they were like super strong, and I there's some good weed around here, but it's usually like skunk weed and it's shitty. It's like I just take what I can get kind of a thing. And so I remember my roommate offering me a gummy, and I was like, yeah, okay, whatever, like I'm gonna be up all night working on this piece anyway. And so I took it, and it got me way too high, and I felt like, and I don't think this is really a thing, but if it was possible, I think I was close to feeling like I was in a marijuana psychosis, because I was just like really like hyper anxious, and was like, I have to do a thing, and I have to do it repetitively, and I have to do it right now. And it ended up being really great for channeling it into that piece, but it didn't feel good while I was doing it. And then I'm very careful with stuff like that now. But I remember it ended up being kind of like a really fucked up version of like a Bob Ross Happy Accident, because it ended up making that piece exactly what I wanted it to feel like. So the final product was a lot better, I think, for the suffering I went through from my stupid bad high.
Have you ever tried any drawings on psychedelics?
No, and I'm actually pretty terrified of psychedelics, because my late father he took a lot of acid when he was younger, and I'm just really careful with that kind of stuff in general, because he actually succumbed to substance abuse issues, and so I'm very, like, I actually didn't even smoke pot for the first time until I was like 21, I think. And I just, like, I'm very careful with like setting boundaries for myself with a lot of that stuff. And I think it's super easy with especially with art and subculture to infuse drug culture into it and start going down a pathway with that. And anybody I know that's dabbled with psychedelics, like, sometimes even the first time, it just seems like they're never exactly the same afterwards. And it's not as easy of an answer as saying like it's a good or a bad thing. It's just a noticeable difference, and it's kind of a scary thing to think about. That I would probably try psilocybin, like mushrooms or something, because that seems pretty innocuous and not like a big deal. But like anything harder than that, I have no interest in, just because of the addiction issues that I've seen rampant in my community and also my family, because we live like in a hotbed for like really, really bad heroin epidemic and like the opioid epidemic. It's really, really bad in my area specifically. And I mean, I think it's just in the US in general now, pretty much. But yeah, so I'm pretty cut and dry with it, but I like weed.
What about you, Martin? Have you dabbled with drugs and drawing?
Yeah. Back at art college, it was LSD, pretty much, mushrooms. And yeah, it was sort of part and parcel of being at art college where I was. You've got to smoke weed and you've got to try acid. But we used to get creative with it, though. We told ourselves we were doing it for the right reasons, and that with pens and paper and good music. And yeah, opened up a few doors and drew a lot of stuff that made no sense afterwards. But yeah, no, I think if I did it these days, they'd probably kill me.
Yeah.
I couldn't imagine doing it now. But back then it was, it sort of, I became aware of other avenues of thought.
Mhm.
Yeah, you know, when you're doing that sort of thing and you can see colours and see the colours of sounds, I should say.
Yeah.
Things like that. When you're sort of putting lines on paper, you get that feeling of, what it must have been like as a toddler watching somebody start to slowly make a face out of a line, and you know, that sort of awe and wonder of, wow, that you've created something real there. You know? So it taps into that sort of primal, But there's no way I'd do it anymore.
No, I get what you mean by like threshold. I definitely don't think I can do, like, I used to do a lot of psychedelics, I'm not gonna lie, but then I kind of ruined myself with my own threshold by accidentally doing like 50 hits of acid. And, yeah, it was like half a vial. Yeah, I it's one of those things like you don't realize until you're there, and then once you pass that threshold, there's you just have to kind of push through. Yeah,
right.
But I almost thought I was going to be an entirely different person, like where I wasn't going to recover for a bit.
Right.
I see.
Well, I think something that's also held me back is that I just don't have any like close personal friends who who have any interest in that kind of stuff. And I feel like if I were going to delve any further, I would want it to be with somebody that I really trust to supervise, because I especially with like mental health issues that I deal with and like being on SSRIs and stuff, I always hear that psychedelics can really fuck you up and give you a super bad high, a really bad trip, like initially, if your brain is attuned to SSRIs, or if you are even on the depressive spectrum in any like really
well, it messes with your serotonin levels, and if your serotonin is already at a low, and then you go in a high, and then it drops lower than you're already low, then it goes to dangerous levels. So yeah, I mean, I could see that for sure.
Yeah, there was somebody local to me who he took like just a massive amount of LSD all at once because he was trying to kill himself. And I
don't think you can. I mean, you mentally
I don't really know. I think he just wanted to like just completely lose himself.
Right.
And also he was I think he was institutionalized for a little bit. And we actually didn't know if he was ever going to come out again, just because of how much he had done. And he's out now, but he's pretty wild. So
yeah, but then you've heard these people like been taking too much and they've healed like these health problems they've had forever, and all of a sudden they're cured because they took a massive amount of psychedelics. I don't know.
Yeah, well, and he also, that same guy also thinks that he's a messiah and has a little Facebook group for it. So
nice.
That'll happen.
So has your artwork gotten you in any trouble? Either of you? I guess Silus, start.
No.
I tried.
Yeah, I was inviting the controversy in my final semester of college, but nobody said anything to me. So like if they said anything to anybody, I just feel bad for whoever was on staff that had to hear it and then be like, yeah, but like it's already up. Like so too bad for them. Sorry for any of those people that heard complaints about that show. But I really just haven't had any major issues. I think that I've had people kind of like sort of get a little shitty in like public art groups, but in like a really removed way where it wasn't like they were specifically directing a comment at me. It was almost more just like a statement on how they think it's really fucked up that art like this floats around or exists or blah blah blah. But like even then it was on threads where multiple people were sharing, so I don't think that it was, you know, a targeted thing.
Yeah, I can see that. What about you, Martin?
No, it's never actually got me in trouble. I mean, I'm sure I've offended people, but it's not got back to me. But I do keep like my art persona separate to my real life day-to-day thing. So, you know, people that I work with and you know, I don't sort of get into discussions about art. I sort of shy away from talking about it completely. But I think for me, I have to compartmentalize like that to make my life work, really. So I guess if, you know, certain people that have known me a long time found out, it could get me in trouble, but touch wood, it hasn't so far. And luckily, like everything I do is within groups of like-minded people, really. So
right, and it's all paid work, commission work, so it's like, hey, I'm doing a job, so you know.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and that's always a good get out as well. You know, I remember when I had my first art book out, and I'd not shown my stepmother any of it, and I showed her the art book, and she sort of looked through it and said, "You're a twisted bugger, aren't you?" and that was my answer. I said, it was a commission. I was just doing what I was asked. I was following a brief.
I told them I didn't want to do it.
Yeah.
They made me. They paid me money.
They doubled their offer.
I got exploited. No, but yeah, it's really interesting though. I think part of the reason that I don't see any backlash from anybody is because I'm so surrounded by all of the people that are into the same niches of art or into the same scene, you know, creatively. And I think that anytime, even if something seems like really like fucked up on the surface or whatever, I mean, it's all subjective at the end of the day. But I think that you run into instances where if there's like an established community and there's camaraderie and there's like positive commenting back and forth and stuff, suddenly it just seems a lot less like something worth shaking a stick at. Like people just move on. Like it kind of seems like when you see people getting in like massive amounts of like stirring the shit on social media and stuff, it's kind of an all or nothing response. It's kind of a lot of times it's almost like this like roving horde of people with pitchforks and torches, like kind of scouring the internet for like a new thing to blow up and be mad about for a little bit and deplatform or whatever, or get a post deleted, and then you see them kind of like find a way to centralize on some random like small time creator, and then it kind of just either they submit and delete the one post and then those people leave them alone forever, or they get a bunch of new audience members and more popularity off of it. So at this point, like I try to look for the silver linings and that stuff, and I'm like, yeah, I mean, like if people came for the stuff that I'm doing, like I kind of feel like it's probably just gonna get me more followers in like a net way afterwards, so whatever.
Okay. Well, it's kind of the end of like I mean, it comes to like group questions, but I guess some individual questions for you. But Silus, so you obviously worked with Sam Hell and Brokehouse, but have you done any commission work for any other releases outside of Sam Hell?
Yeah, so I'm just starting to branch out in that way, and I've got 3 finished projects, but not for anything that's been announced, but or like has specifically been shown for releases, so I don't want to say specifically what the title is, but I've done a piece for Lucky Cerruti of Dead Vision Productions now. I've done a piece for Tony Masiello of SOBhorror.com. I've done it, and I just finished a piece for Indy Bazin from Underworld Subroxa for a release they're doing. And I've got other people on the list for commissions. There's somebody who a friend of mine locally who is still waiting. It's been like a year now. He wants me to do all the illustrations for this like dark children's book that he wrote about a cannibal. But it's like in the style of a children's book, but it's like an adult horror thing, you know. But he's been so patient with me and so kind to me, like while I've had all this other stuff that's like a little more big ticket, that I'm like, oh, I gotta grab this while I have the opportunity to, you know. And he's like, yeah, no, take your time. So like I've got a lot of low key stuff that's not film related on the back burner for other people. Travis Davis, who is a independent horror author, and I think I just used his Instagram name. I probably should have used his author name, which I can't remember. Something Bateman. But he has a couple lined up that he wants to do with me in the future, which will be really cool. I'm really excited for that. I just got reached out to last night by the guy from Bones and Brews podcast about doing artwork for him and then being on his podcast next week, which was super cool and super quick timing. And he had actually watched an AMA thing I did on Instagram where I was talking about some of those like pulp paperback artworks and showing off some of those books that I liked and stuff. And so he actually wants me to try and channel some like Goosebumps influence into the artwork for his podcast. And that's like super exciting for me because I'm really excited to try something like that.
Yeah, it seems like there's a small little pop of new podcasts popping up soon, like not, or just recently, and I'm stoked about it. You know, it's kind of cool to be see a lot of that, especially in the Discord, like that are all like being in support, and you know, it's nice.
Yeah, and I'm really I'm working on a zine with White Gardenia with Daniel.
Cool.
And that's really cool. Renee Weisner actually submitted some stuff for it, which is super cool. He was one of the first people to ask, which was, you know, just mind-blowing for me. I thought that was super cool because he was like number 2 or 3 that responded when I made like an open call for submissions. Sam has some stuff that's in there as well. Daniel's releasing some stuff. I've got some new artwork that's going to be exclusive to that, but it's not even specifically for like filmmakers or anything. It's just for dark art or like outsider art regarding themes of mental health or extremity. And I just happen to have a lot of mutuals and people that were interested in joining in, so that's really cool. But yeah, there's all kinds of stuff on the horizon. I just have to find the fucking time to do it, right? Because I'm working full time at my day job, and actually I have a lot of like creative license kind of stuff that I do there because I do a lot of public programming and stuff like that. But I'm getting way more inundated with things that are creative and within the wheelhouse of exactly what I want to be doing, which is super awesome. I've just never been this busy before. It's really interesting.
And you don't want to overstack yourself because then you just get overwhelmed and you just don't want to work on any of it. You're like,
yeah. And I've already been in the psych ward, so like I'm not trying to go to the psych ward for all the wrong fucking reasons. Like it's like I had too many prospects.
Yeah.
So I broke down.
We're from 2 projects to 100, and I just don't.
So I blew my head off.
Yeah. Yeah. So what? I mean, what has been your best, like, favorite thing to work with so far? I mean, I know. Sorry, I'm gonna rephrase that question. Sorry. I'm just trying to think. Because I was trying to get into kind of like the best way of asking about Sam Hell, but I know like with everything going on, and I'm trying not to get too much into things. So I guess more just like trying to bring in the concept of Sam Howell and working with him, and how it was working with him, and kind of like where you see that going and everything.
So Sam, I really think first and foremost, I'm really I'm into what he does. I remember first seeing the release trailers and posts about Red Tragedy and Spit, and I was immediately drawn to those films, honestly mainly because of the artwork that he created for them with the like the product design. I love the way his releases look. I love how professional and how overboard he'll go on like really designing releases, especially being that they were for short films. Like he was getting these like really nice like pressed DVD releases for these short films that had like inserts and posters and just really great design for the cover arts he was creating. And so when I looked into the films more and I started collecting them and getting into them and watching stuff, I was like, oh man, this is connoting a lot of stuff that I really am into, and specific niches of extreme cinema that I'm really interested in, because I've always been interested in J horror. Growing up, I just loved Japanese horror and a lot of just Asian horror in general, but especially Japan, because they have a lot of really awesome like I'm not super into a lot of paranormal horror movies, but I love like Japanese ghost movies. Like those are the ones I like a lot. And you know, they're like cyberpunk and splatterpunk stuff and whatnot. But I remember one of the first avenues I went down when I started to explore extreme cinema and research it more was Tumbling Doll of Flesh. And I remember thinking with the Baroque House name, I was like, is that a riff on that? And then Sea of Blood came out, and the formatting on the release with the artwork literally has like an emulation to an aspect of the original VHS for Tumbling Doll of Flesh. And I was like, okay, like this is what he's doing, you know, and this is super cool. And I started to pay more attention to his films and watch all of his stuff. And it just felt like it was very specific to what I wanted out of like an extreme cinema experience. Like it was just this like aesthetic overload of like really well picked and curated music of varying subgenres, all subgenres that I liked already, and with these like visuals and things that were connoting a bunch of films that were standouts to me in my early exploration of extreme cinema. And at that point in time, other people weren't doing it that way. Like they weren't creating films that were like that. So I just really gravitated towards his stuff, and started to just be a little more proactive in collecting and reaching out to give support and praise for the aspects of the movies that I liked and whatnot. And then before I knew it, he started to reach out for more art assets for future releases. And that was a super big deal to me, because I would have been happy even if it was like a one and done, you know, like just to me at that point in time, just getting to create cover art in general for anything that actually got released was like such a big fucking deal. Like it just meant the world to me. And he took a chance on me and let me make artwork for something without even seeing, like, I don't know if he even really looked into any of the stuff I had posted on Instagram at that time. Like I didn't have anything like that even looked like what that cover ended up looking like, or anything I've made for him subsequently. Like nothing I posted before was really like that. And one thing that has really been awesome with working with Sam is that he's given me a lot of free reign and a lot of creative freedom on these stuff that he's had me make. Like a lot of times he'll just give me just such a loose concept and give me a screener or some stills from whatever the upcoming project is. and then he'll just let me go. And I really, really, really appreciated him like letting me experiment in that way, especially with the end result of those projects being something that was going to be seen and bought by hundreds of people and be sitting on somebody's shelf in their collection. Like that was such a huge deal to me, you know, because I mean, there are a ton of artists in the world. Like there are more artists every day, especially in, it's so easy now to express yourself in that way. And it's a great thing with like the advent of social media and how easy it is to get into art with digital art now. But to be given the chance to create something for something that I already was interested in and held in like this sort of like reverence for myself, just because it like ticked so many boxes for me. I was just flabbergasted that I got the opportunity, but then I was blown away that he continued to give me opportunities. And I've already created artwork for a bunch of other stuff that he's working on, completely separate from Extreme Cinema and completely separate from Sam Hel, and stuff that he's not even promoting to any of these outlets or channels, because he wants to rebuild a new audience, like completely grassroots, completely organically, with these new ventures, and let people filter in that want to transition to the new stuff, and then not like try to just like bring over whoever is willing to like hit follow and never look again, you know. And I think that's super commendable, because he's pulling out before his vision gets bloated and done to death, you know, which is really cool, just because I think that it's going to let the catalog of work he's created really stand as something that has a lot of quality control behind it.
I ultimately think it's a smart move.
Yeah. And the fact that he's already had me work on some stuff for other projects and other avenues is just like such a big deal to me, you know, because even though I love horror and I love extreme cinema and underground cinema and indie cinema and whatever, that's not the only thing I'm interested in, you know. And he's actually moving in directions like we just share. The more I get to know and understand Sam and like his influences and the stuff that he is putting into these works and where he's coming from, it's like there are so many adjacent interests that we have that are overlapping and stuff that we've never even had conversations about. And then he's like, hey, do you want to do our work for this? It's inspired by this, this, and this. And I'm like, it's just like we're on the same wavelength. Or like he's like speaking my language exactly when he like offers those projects to me. And I just feel really lucky to have found a connection like that with a creative who wants to collaborate, because I think it's super easy with creative jobs and with design oriented jobs to fall into a rut where you're just kind of making things and it feels by the numbers, and it feels like, oh, I just do the same thing every time. I just incorporate like this, and this, depending on what they tell me to do, and not have any kind of passion involved in it. It can become more so like, by being an artist, you just turn into a designer and a technician versus an artist, being able to kind of like add your own thing, you know, to your final product. And I just feel really, really fortunate to be creating in the niche that I'm creating in right now, and creating for the people that I'm creating for right now, because there's a lot of passion here, and there is a lot of understanding and openness and willingness to take chances, let people express themselves, let people work the way they want to work. And there's a lot of trust. There's a lot of trust between a lot of these creators that are reaching out, right off the bat. Just the fact that they're like, well, none of your cover arts ever look like the same thing, so I have no idea what you're going to submit to me, but here, try it anyway, you know. I think that's just like a very humbling and a very flattering experience to be having with people. And a lot of the opportunities I'm getting now are strictly because of the work that I got to do for Sam first and foremost. Like, that's how people got eyes on anything that I'm doing. And that's a super big deal. And also the first project, the Oddworld of Felicia Fisher slipcover project, was that came about right before my dad passed away. And I remember I was in this, super severe rut and art block, and anything I was trying to do creatively wasn't like panning out the way I had planned for it to. And I was kind of getting worried about just kind of being stuck in my hometown and not having like an outlet that would lead to anything, because he was such an accomplished musician and he had done so many things that I was so proud of him for, with art and with music and with creative outlets in general. And I wanted to move in a similar direction. I was just trying to find my niche, like just find a place to fit in for creating and for having those connections with other people. And I got to show him my cover art for Oddworld right before he passed away. And I remember that was so impactful for me, because when I was grieving and when I was dealing with the initial process after he passed, untimely, like suddenly, the thing I kept in my head the entire time to keep myself going is reminding myself like that there was a really positive end note, that I got to show him the start of me moving in a direction that I was going to be really proud of showing him. Like, once I started to accumulate more work, like once I started to have more under my belt to show, like, and he was, like jazzed, like that somebody picked me up to do work for one of their things, and that it was an actual movie that got an actual release, and that I had a Blu-ray in my hand that I was holding in front of him to show him, like it's
Tangible thing. Yeah.
It was just such a big deal. So yeah, I'm infinitely grateful to Sam for giving me the opportunity to create things for him. I'm grateful for the amount of trust and the amount of leeway he gives me on what I can do creatively for all of the projects he allows me to contribute to. And I just, nothing but respect and positivity, because he's done a lot more for me than I think he even realizes that he has. So
I've learned a lot from him, and especially when you're getting into looking into his new line of everything. When I was doing his interview and he started getting into like talking about like Richard Kern and Gaspard Noé, and getting into the people that weren't necessarily in the extreme side of cinema, you can see that he sees cinema in a bigger picture than just this tangible thing, or it's like, or just like a one-dimensional thing. Like he has a lot of depth and understanding of cinema in general. So yeah, I'm kind of stoked to see what happens.
me too.
So getting Martin, how many artists have you or how many people have you worked for now when it comes to making when it comes to directors? Because you're at least 20, right?
At least, yeah. I'm lucky enough that I've worked with most people on the scene really by now, and a lot of people that I admire as well. So like I said, I started off with Jörg, and I was a huge fan of his. Sam actually hired me very early on in one of his previous incarnations as I think it was Molly Walsh. No, it was
Lost Witches.
Lost Witches.
Yeah, Lost Witches.
Yeah. So yeah, I did some work for him early on.
You did Rope Maiden, right?
I did Rope Maiden. Yeah.
That's such a cool
the first thing.
Yeah, I have it right here. If I grab it. I could probably grab like there's probably at least like 50 DVDs that have your artwork on it. I guarantee you.
I've pretty much saturated the scene. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I did a piece for his Cannibal release as well, the Dora one. He wanted me to do a piece of art for the inside of it, which is, I think, the first thing I did for him. And I did a cover art for a project that never got released as well, which I actually sent to Kiyotaka Surisaki. He owns that piece now.
Oh, okay.
I sent him that as a thank you for something he did for me. And Sam's a big fan of Kiyotaka as well, of course.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
Yeah. And it was thanks to Sam that Dora became aware of me as well, actually. So yeah, I've got to thank him for that. Because then since then I've done artwork for pretty much every Dora release now, I think. A couple that haven't been released yet, but they're coming. Yeah, and I've worked for. I did a little bit of work for Ryan Nicholson not long before he passed. That never actually got released. It was the Balls T-shirt design he asked me to do. Did a lot of work with Phil Stevens. I've worked a lot with a company called Acid Brain in the States. I do a comic book with, and I got in touch with them through Ron DeCaro, who did the Gateway Meets, the Brightside trilogy. I'd already done a piece of work for one of his campaigns, and he introduced me to Acid Brain. But then via Acid Brain, I managed to end up doing a cover art for the Gateway Meet. So it's been cool because a lot of the films that I really dig in the underground scene, even if they've been released previously, I've somehow looked out and ended up managing to do cover art for some version of that film later on down the line. And I just keep telling people that I'm a very selfish man and I just want to fill my shelves with all of my favourite movies with my cover art on. That's the plan. That's the end goal.
That's funny.
When you uploaded that profile picture that you have just of you standing in front of a bunch of your stuff, I remember that being like a big kicking off point for me, where I was like, I want a shelf of my shit.
Yeah, right.
I gotta get going. I need to get more stuff under my belt. Holy shit, that's awesome. And I remember too, when I first found out about Lost Witch, because it was like way after working with Sam on a bunch of other different shit. I started seeing people post about those VHS and just random threads on Facebook. And when I saw your piece on the Cannibal one, I was like, oh, that's so fucking cool. It's such a cool VHS. And I was like immediately pissed off because I knew I was never going to get a copy of it because it's like limited to 50 and super sought after. So I was just like, oh shit.
Well, I didn't get a copy of that one either.
I thought that one was like limited. Yeah, I know some of those, especially the one that limited to 3, the green elephant one. It's like good luck.
Or oh no, yeah, it was like way less than 50. I don't remember how
No,
much.
3 for a green elephant.
That's so crazy.
Yeah, he only did 3 of them. Like that's nuts. Like, good luck. Yeah.
I'm just like, when I get picked up for murder, it's going to be because I found an independent collector and stole all their rare media.
Right. That's why I gave up on the whole trying to be a completionist with everything that Sam Hell ever came out with, because I'm like, I'm never going to get that VHS, so I might as well just like give up on when it comes to that freaking dream.
You gotta know when you.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I still have a pretty sizable collection for what for the time on Prime.
I do for sure. I don't have like, I've got LA Bondage Murders, and that's the only thing I have pre ABH.
Yeah, I'll buy that from
He made me a 1-of-1 DVD copy of The Rope Maid that Guy Pearce signed.
Oh hell yeah!
Oh cool.
That's the only version. Yeah.
Yeah, no, Guys is awesome. I had to do I did the whole screening of Difficulty Breathing with him. That was a cool experience. But
yeah, he's a very knowledgeable guy. keep telling him I'm going to go back to Japan and hassle him soon.
Yeah, I would know. I would love to go like just shopping around with him and just like picking through some some Grammy places.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was looking through a lot of the names of the people that that you did art for, and the only people that I didn't really know too much were Clayton Dean and Jason Hoover. Can you kind of like educate me a little bit on them and just kind of like what their style's like and what their movies are like?
Yeah, well, Clayton Dean, I think in the end he only made that one movie. He was planning on making another one that I was talking to him about. That he actually had a meeting with Giovanni Lombardo Radici, John Morgan.
Guy from Tetro, right?
Yeah, no, the actor from Cannibal Ferox.
Oh, yeah, okay. Yeah.
Giovanni, and
Yeah.
City of Living Dead.
Yeah, I know you're talking about.
Looked like it was going to be a cool project, but it never panned out. But the short film he did that I did the art for, it was kind of an experimental. I think it was black and white. It's very Lynchian. It's been a long time since I've seen it, but it was more of an experience than a watch. It was one of those kind of short films. It was very experimental, very good, very good. He looked like he was going places. But yeah, I don't know what's become of Clayton. I've not heard from him for quite a while. But that one's worth grabbing if you see a copy floating around, for sure.
What was the name of the title? What was the name of the movie?
That was called. God damn it! Hang on. Feed the Black.
Oh, okay.
Feed the Black. Yeah. Yeah, and Jason Hoover was he was pretty big in the indie scene for a while. He was working with Brian K. Williams for a little bit. I think they had a small film company called Jab Pictures at the time. But the first thing I did for him was through another company. It was for a VHS of his film I Am No One, which is a sort of short movie about a serial killer. It just sort of fly on the wall, a bit like Man Bites Dog. So you sort of see this guy and he'd be going through his process of what he does and how he picks up his victims. Sort of quite comedic for a while, and then it gets, shit gets real fast, and then it ends. But it was a really good film. And then he got back in touch with me a while later to do a cover art for a film called something about Room 223. Room 223. And I saw that one recently because it was Tubi. I'd never actually seen it previously. I just did the cover art for it. But that had Ellie Church in it as well. It was a pretty good little film. And I'm sure it's still on Tubi, so you should be able to see that one. The Bodies in Room 223, that's what it's called. But again, I think that was about a sort of hire for contract killer hiding out in a room in a hotel. Can't remember a great deal more about it, to be honest. But I remember enjoying it. It was a good little flick. But yeah, I'm not sure what Jason Hoover's doing anymore. He was pretty big on the scene for a while and then dropped.
Oh no, he dropped off just like that call. He dropped off from the scene entirely. Where did he go? Yeah, but just I was kind of curious with Captain Berlin and kind of explaining that. I was kind of curious because I know both those projects are not ongoing anymore, right? They're done projects.
No, Captain Berlin's ongoing still. It's a pretty popular comic book in Germany at the moment. They've actually just reprinted the sort of bumper edition of the first 3 comic books. They've reprinted it 3 times now. And it's still going. The next issue's been worked on. So I don't work on every issue, but sort of every couple of issues I'll have a comic in there. yeah, usually, Jörg has an idea of what to do, and then we hash out a story and I take it from there. But yeah, that's been one of the better jobs I've had, actually, as far as revenue, because every time it's reprinted, I get royalties, and it's
Nice.
doing very well. It's doing very well in Germany.
Have you ever thought about re-releasing Necromantic, the comics? Just kind of doing to, because it seems like those are hard to find.
Yeah. I think Weissblech Comics is the same company that puts out Captain Berlin, and they did a European version in English and a German version. And I think at the moment it's just gone to sort of print on demand through Amazon. They may still have a few copies available there, but yeah, I hope that they reprint more of them. I think it sort of, I don't know, it missed the mark a little bit when it came out. We advertised it as much as we could, and then eventually, people started to catch on and buy a few issues later on. But I don't think people really understood that it was Necromantic 3, or the closest anyone's going to come to seeing a Necromantic 3, because the story continues on. Have you seen the comic?
No, I mean, no, I've been meaning to. I just haven't been able to get a copy. So, but I haven't gone like heavily seeking it, enough. But I just haven't really seen it. Really. Yeah.
Well, it sort of follows the story of Monica's character and her child 25 years on from the end of Necromantic 2. But I was really proud of the story. It's a very clever story, I think, and it's in keeping in tradition with the first 2 Necromantic movies. Mm-hmm. And it was co-written with Jörg as well, so he was involved himself with the entire process. So yeah, maybe if it gets enough interest again, we'll start printing more copies, hopefully.
Are you planning on doing anything more through your YouTube channel, or is that just done?
Oh man, no. I sort of set it up and then I left it to go stagnant.
Yeah.
So no, I've not done anything with it for years, actually.
Yeah, I was like, last thing was like 3 years or 4 years ago. I was like, okay.
Yeah. Yeah, it's another one of those things like my store envy and the Patreon and things. I'll pick them up and open them, and then I'll forget about them. It's my one downfall is I'm no good at self-promotion or selling myself, or
it's tricky. Yeah,
it's a full-time job in itself.
Yeah, I finally started figuring out how to make money for myself with the podcast, and I've made 7 cents so far. So
oh, congratulations.
5 more than this morning. Hell yeah.
Working my way out. No. Well, working for
that
you
won't
guys.
cover Silus's appearance fee.
Well, hopefully this episode will make a little money. So I'm going for 15 cents.
I'm being exploited.
But yeah, I want to open the floor now to kind of see if you either of you just want to ask each other questions, just about art in general, or your and Shirley's life, or different influences and stuff like that.
So I've got one for Martin real quick, because I noticed him. He literally, you just got the chance to use your own art book as a catalog reference to find a piece. Is that a cool feeling? Is that the first time you did that?
That's not the first, and that's pretty much the only reason I've created that book. So I can just reference. But yeah, no, I've done so many like little projects over the years that a lot of them slip my mind.
I'm like already there, and I've done like 10. I'm already like, I remember what I've done.
Honestly, just of the ones I remember, it would have been a pamphlet. Yeah. But I've got one for you, Silas. If you could work with any other director in the scene, who would you want to work with?
Oh man. Honestly, I don't see this happening because he kind of has his own thing going on, but I really, really love James Bell's work. I'm super, super into his art style and the entire aesthetic of like everything that he brings to the table, between like his analog synth stuff that he uses in movies,
Kisco Kids.
and the artwork that he creates, and like the stop motion stuff, and the super crazy like gore versions, special editions of stuff he was doing a while back.
Yeah.
Just the visual style, the stuff that those films connote, like they always make me think of like Street Trash and a bunch of like real messy, sloppy, like real low budget, like super cool, like underground 80s flicks and shit. And you can tell that there's just so many layers to the aestheticism that he brings to the table. And man, I'd love to do something with him. I don't even care what it is, like some sort of like minor collaboration. It doesn't have to be artwork. He's just such a cool guy, and I've listened to like all of his interviews, and he seems just so kind and down to earth, like about everything. And he also like makes this shit on like shoestring budgets. Is like I was listening to his Bones and Bruise thing earlier today while I was working on a piece, and he was talking about how one of his movies was kind of made at a loss because he ended up spending $400 on it. And I was like, damn, like he's got it down to a science. Like it's so crazy, you know. But he puts out super cool stuff all the time. I love to work with him. Also Guy Sculpting Fragments, like his stuff is awesome. The covers you've done for him are awesome. I'd love to know that some of my stuff was floating around in Japan. Like that would be the coolest feeling in the world, because so much Japanese cinema, whether it be like 80s and 90s, like one-off anime movies, and like the Vampire Hunter D and Berserk and like Wicked City and all that kind of shit, or like just any Japanese horror stuff like that. Like the idea of me having an underground horror cover floating around Japan would be like the coolest thing in the world. Those are two off the top of my head for sure.
Yeah, both very cool guys. Yeah, and I feel like I mean, I'm lucky enough to own a couple of James Bell props. But he sort of is part of the furniture of the scene. Well, he makes the furniture of the scene. Like nearly every indie movie that's out there, you can recognize James Bell props straight off the bat.
Exactly.
It's like, you know, it's a James Bell prop. And I loved Dog Dick was awesome when that first came. I was still a big fan of that. And Tantrum I love as well.
Yeah.
Tantrum's fantastic.
Yeah, I remember when Dog Dick was under fire for a bit, and I felt like it was such a big bummer, because it was just like I was so into that movie, and I was so into how like on the nose and like wearing it on its sleeve it was, with like the Gummo influence, but it also felt like its own movie, but it felt like an even more real version of Gummo. And
that's what I felt.
Yeah, and he described it in the Bones and Bruise podcast as literally being like a time capsule of a specific point in his life, and he talked about how down and out he was at the time that he made that. And I was like, you know, like at this point it's just like somebody having the audacity to bare their soul for other people to see, and like be able to like see what they were going through, or kind of like what their day-to-day was like in their community, you know. And then he got shit on for a bit for it, and I thought that was so shitty, you know. Because that's such a cool film.
Some YouTuber demand therapy money or something from
hearing
something about
I need therapy because I saw a real depiction of what it's like to live in poverty in the middle of Indiana, you know, like, or whatever. Like I'm kind of in the same boat in a lot of ways, but I think from the stuff that James has described, it seems like there are more disparities in his community, and it's a little smaller than where I live. So like, but I like understand where he's coming from because I grew up in like complete like rural and suburban blight. Like that it's very close to home, and I just feel like a deep connection with a lot of the stuff that he's made. Like I just love his catalog.
Yeah.
Another thing for you, Martin, is actually perfect time to ask this because I know that you're a big fan of the Elephant Man. Do you have the movie novelization?
I don't. Actually.
You don't? Okay, cool.
No.
So the other day, like last week at work, part of what I do in my job, like I do cataloging and data entry stuff, and I withdraw old materials from the library to get put into like book sale donation and stuff. And on my cart of withdrawals, I pulled the movie novelization of The Elephant Man.
Wow.
Which is super cool because I didn't know it had one, first of all. And secondly, I don't know how it is where you're at, but in the States, it seems like it's exceedingly harder to find like movie license paperbacks. Like the paperbacks for like Halloween and Friday the 13th and all that stuff. Like it becomes like really hard to get, and you just kind of have to look into them in thrift stores or buy them on the collector's market for an arm and a leg. But this is that like paperback size novelization, but it's in the library style hardback binding, and it's in surprisingly good condition for its age. And I came across this and withdrew it from the collection the day before you made the post about your current collection. And I had already had you in mind for it, and I just thought it was super perfect timing. So I was going to ask you if you would like me to send this to you.
Oh, hell yes.
I would love to contribute to your collection for that film, but also it is literally branded with like the stamps and stickers from my library. So it's, like,
oh, that's
it's a
awesome
to me for you.
Oh, thank you, mate. I'll have to find something to send you in return.
Yeah, no worries.
Oh, thanks a lot, man. Yeah, no, that's one thing I don't have. I recently got I found an original version of the script, sort of used version of the script from the set, and it was going to cost so much to post here from the States. It was unreal. So I had it posted to a friend of mine over there to then post on to me, thinking eBay was just trying to rip me off. And it was going to cost 3 times as much as the original estimate. So it's languishing in his apartment in the States until COVID post is less crazy.
For sure, yeah. Yeah, it's COVID post is crazy. It's super crazy.
Oh, I really appreciate that, mate. That's great.
Yeah, no worries.
Was any...
I haven't.
Oh, sorry.
Oh, sorry. I was just going to say I haven't seen Let's Stop at the Morgue yet. I've got to get a copy of that. But the artwork that Silus did for the cover of that, where did the idea for the artwork come from? Was that from stills or from the movie itself?
So what I did with that one is I worked off of stills. Sam sent me just a batch of specific stills that he was wanting included or incorporated into the artwork, and he had a few specific shots in mind that he was really fond of, and I tried to take those images and figure out a way to create a unique composition with them that wasn't just like a standard collage. Like I really like I like to do different things with collage every time, but sometimes I think like a stacked collage, like kind of like the shirt that Christian's wearing, or like your design on your shirt that you're wearing is like more beneficial for the full range of the piece. But I was like, what if I play with the the proportions of things. So like I use one of these images to be like a very large central image, and then in the negative space in the corners, I try to fit other images within those spaces. So that was the first time I tried to do something a little different like that, because usually with collage stuff, I kind of keep it around the same size proportionally and just kind of like fill the space until it looks appeasing, you know, like you're kind of aesthetically pleasing to look at. But with that one, I try to be intentional because I wanted it to be something that was kind of eye-catching while also having to work within the constraints of it being monochromatic, because the film is in black and white. And I couldn't use color to make it pop as a shelf piece for people to see and want to grab if they found it in the wild or whatever. So I was like just trying to think of a way that I could still make it kind of pop. So I think that the pale figure in the middle and then the hair being like the separation point for a bunch of the images and breaking them up, and having someone with a gun to their head being like the central image of it was a good compromise to try and find a way to make people give a shit about picking it up.
Yeah, it still catches the eye pretty effectively, definitely.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Well, I think I'm gonna close it out. We're getting kind of in a good time. But no, thank you very much, though. I do appreciate you both coming on. Ms. Kajat, I mean, I could chat forever, really, to be honest, but you know. But yeah, thank you again, and look forward to seeing what both of you come out with. So, both of you have definitely become a big staple into when it comes to the extreme art community. So thank you.
Thank you. I'm just jazzed to be in the same virtual room as all of you. So thank you for the opportunity and the interest.
Yeah, no, and thank you. Actually, a really quick shout out to you just in general, just because our logo and everything, just for people that don't know, you did that, and the backdrop, and you've been a big part of this. I think you were my first person on Discord, to like chime on and be part of that. So you've been definitely a big fan of our channel from day one. So
yeah, I definitely am, and sorry I am not active on Discord, but I'm I get socially overwhelmed very easily. So I still read stuff and I still look at stuff on occasion, but I think the Discord is so cool, and I want you to know that I think it's such a cool resource for when you want to see news or see conversation about like anything specific, just because of all the
not being afraid of getting banned for some bullshit post.
Well, on all the specific servers for all the specific releasing companies or topics or anything that people want to talk about.
Because I don't want to get all discombobulated and all over the place, and because people can definitely be like that, and
it's really well organized, really well put together. I think that the way you guys have been building up this entire thing has been so awesome, and it's really impressive to see your growth within just the past year that it has existed. So cool.
Yeah, no, you too, Martin. I've seen that you've been on a few of the screenings and been part.
Thanks, mate. Well, I'd never been on Discord until you invited me. I think I had to say to you, I don't know what I'm doing here.
I was confused as fuck. Yeah, I was confused as fuck first starting it, but I was just like, whatever, I'm gonna push through and figure it out, and I'm glad I did. But
I was very green. Yeah, the screen going in, I was in one.
Yeah. Well, thanks again. But yeah, you both take care.
Yeah, you too, mate. Cheers.
Yeah. Bye.
Later.